Ready? We'll go ahead and call this Board of Supervisors meeting to order. We appreciate everyone being here, and Supervisor Ron Campbell is calling in. And so I've asked Supervisor David Gomez to lead us in the pledge.
Let's join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gomez. We now go to agenda item 1B, call to the public. Is there anyone that would like to address the board and call to the public? Good morning, Jojo.
Hey, gentlemen, Joanne Cathcart, Greenlee County Chamber of Commerce this morning. So I'm wearing a different hat than I usually do. Just want a reminder to everybody that we have 2 events coming up from the chamber. The first one being July 13th, which is Meet Your Candidate Forum at the Clifton Social Club, July 13th at 6 p.m. The second one being, Christmas in July, Saturday, July 27th at the Legion. And I want to say, yes, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we really are encouraging small businesses to come out, home-based businesses, etc. So people can get some of maybe their Christmas shopping or summer shopping or anything like that in on July 27th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else in call to public? Yes. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning, Sherry Milharo, Greenlee County Recorder. I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow is the start of early voting. We will be sending about 2,000 early ballots in the mail tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Sheriff.
I'm Sumner, Greenlee County Sheriff. I don't know if you 3 gentlemen have as well, but I've been getting inundated on emails with people from all over the state calling for clean elections and hand counts and all this kind of stuff, right? I'm sure you guys see them. I get a bunch of them. A lot of mine are actually labeled Greenlee County Board of Supervisor. I'm not in that role. A lot of them are calling upon the sheriff. A lot of them are calling upon the Board of Supervisors to make sure we're doing our due diligence. But I just want to publicly thank the recorder who just spoke and the elections director for the good job that they do. And we don't have those type of issues. And I thank them for what they do to make sure that we don't have to worry about those situations. But it's going to be nice when all that email ceases. So anyways, thank you for your time, and thank you ladies for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in call to the public? There being, I don't see anyone else in call to the public. We'll now go to agenda item 2. The Public Health Service District, the Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of the Greenlee County Public Health Service District, and after the order of business will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. Following these considerations, A, consent agenda.
So move that we approve the consent agenda as posted.
I second that.
We have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion. Oh, thank you. Motion passes. We are now convened as the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of Greenlee County Flood Control District, and after the order of business, we'll reconvene as Board of Supervisors. A, consent agenda.
So move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very, very much. We'll now convene as the Board of Supervisors, and we will go to agenda item 4. Mr. Hines.
Good morning.
4A, we'll address that, and then 4B, the sheriff has asked to.
Good morning, Tony Hines, Fleet Manager. Item A, we're looking for an approval for the addendum A to the contract on the Empire Service contract to add the last 3 pieces of equipment that we purchased.
Okay.
Uh, okay, a motion would be in order if there's no,
Okay, I so move that we approve the addendum A of the Empire Service Contract for the 3 new machines purchased within the last year as presented.
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, excuse me, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We now go to 4B, and Sheriff, you've asked to address that.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, Tim Sumner, Greeley County Sheriff. On this one, I know we came and spoke already before. Tony had brought this up already, and I spoke on this. It's a little bit of sticker shock that we had from the last time around when we first got the initial quote in from Pride, which did the upfitting from the last time. And so I wanted to go out to bid and look at some others. We got 2 quotes this time, one from the same company, Pride, and also the Arizona Eastern Products, AEP we call. And AEP quote came in extremely similar, as you see. So just kind of the general market. Speaking around a little bit and finding out, even though we did not get quotes other than just these 2, just in general, the prices are about that. They are what they are. And just the prices have climbed quite a bit. I spoke with Tony briefly. A lot of it, he'll talk to you and show you that, but it's just the prices are what they are. It's just that is really can't bring them down at hardly any on any of these prices. Looking at what we can cut, and Lieutenant Paul easily did talk about cutting some things and looking at ways we could get around some of the equipment, but still needing what we have to have in the vehicles. The one thing I did ask Tony about, it's not sure yet, is AEP. They are a little bit lower on the quote. We're looking at about a $4,000 to $5,000 difference between these 2 companies. And AEP, recently I had another first responder group who came to me using AEP and asked what we were using for these new trucks because they'd seen the lighting and they liked the lighting and the options better. So far, we've been pretty happy with those new ones from Pride, who they actually have a port so that we have a program. Lieutenant easily has a program that we can change that lighting. I talked last time about the lighting getting so bright and things like that, and we want to bring that down. And so there's options for us to change that going through AEP. We have other AEP products, and we're not sure because we haven't been able to do that as of yet. So I just wanted to verify with Tony, and I asked him. He said he'll check on that. But if the quote's cheaper for AEP and that's what we go with, that's fine. At this point, we really in the sheriff's office don't have that much of concern between the 2. They're pretty close and similar. So far, though, I'd say that Lieutenant Easley, the one who deals with this, has been, he likes both companies, but the Pride and having that option to change those lights, to be able to change some things. Sometimes there's lights that'll flick at different times. If you lock a door, that could be detrimental at nighttime for a deputy walking up somewhere and trying to sneak up, and all of a sudden you lock your door to walk away and you get a couple of lights flicker. With AEP, we were not able to change that. It could be, an officer safety issue. We just like the options to be able to do Pride, where we can actually program and rechange some of those lighting features if it comes to it. So if AEP can do that, that's great. They're cheaper. And if they have that option, it's great. If they don't have that option, I think that little bit of higher price and the difference, it'd be better to go with Pride. So that's all I have to say on it. There's, like I said, not a huge difference on these. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Hines.
So item B is where we went out to bid for the upfitting of the 2 new Tahoes that we have. We did get 2 quotes back. The 3rd quote didn't come back in time because he was checking with his manufacturer and just wasn't getting the information back in time. So we do have the 2 quotes. They're pretty similar. I was asked before why they were so high. Excuse me. I have a comparison here if I can.
Yes, please.
Kind of hard to get apples to apples, but it's a general thing on what was done for the last 3 Tahoes that we did.
Yeah.
Compared to the 2 that we have went out for now. So the list on the left would be for what we had the equipment on for the 2019 Tahoes that we purchased. And the other side, the 2024, is the current list from AEP. The biggest difference you notice would be the Wayland light bar that's on the top went up like $5,000–6,000. And the other major thing was the radio and the computer equipment. We've always done that separately. This time we put it into the quote to have them just do everything all at once. So those are the two main things, and that was probably 8,000 or 9,000 for the radio and the computer equipment. So that's why we're up about 40,000 for each upfitting.
40 or
40 or
31?
31. Yeah.
It's 40. This just totaled, the column just totaled to 31, but it's not all filled in, but the actual quote from AEP came out at 40,000.
And about the lights, yeah, I know I've driven up on, and those lights are so bright, they blind the traffic coming from behind. To me, it would be a safety deal. It blinds the heck out of me.
Right, and that's what the sheriff was talking about, where it would dim it at night and have that option to do that. It does it automatically, but it's in the system. I'm not sure if that system is in the AEP quote, because they name them differently. We can check on that, or we can just go with the Pride quote where we know we have it.
How much is the difference between the Pride and the whatever the other one is?
AEP was 40,000 and Pride is,
44, right?
it would be 42,
Oh, 42, yeah.
42,803
Shoot.
Another 2,000
per vehicle.
per vehicle.
Per
But
vehicle, 40.
I tell you what, it scares me when those lights are so doggone bright, and DPS has the same problem, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but it literally blinds me. Maybe it's for cataracts, I don't know, but I think it's a safety concern. To me,
We're in line with the cost. I did put 42,000 not to exceed on the quote, and that was more than AEP. Just for the things if we had to adjust anything in the quote. I'm not sure how much these systems would be to adjust. But like I say, if we go with Pride, we know they're already in there.
You mentioned earlier, Tony, about the radios and stuff that you used to do that you've done separately in the past.
Correct.
Why did we go? I understand when you said we'd rather just do it all at one time, one package deal. With doing the radios after or separate from this, would it save $2,000 to make up for these lights that we're talking about?
No, we'd still have to purchase the radios. So what we normally did was purchase the radios ourselves through Canyon State. And then we'd send them to the installer and they would install them while they had everything taken apart. If we got it in time. If not, we had to have Canyon State come in, take it all apart again, put the radio in and then go out.
and that's expensive too.
Okay.
So-
Go ahead.
In light of that, what's your recommendation?
I would recommend going with Pride and getting the systems that we want.
I tend. Ron, do you have a feeling on
Being the
any?
42,000?
Correct.
Right, okay.
42.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Just conferring with Derek that there is no issue with going with a higher quote, knowing that it is a little different and we're getting an option that we're, desiring with the higher quote.
The law on procurement is the lowest and best. And so you're not required to go out and buy the Kmart blue light special, no pun intended. But you're looking for value, and the procurement code is designed to purchase value, same way you would with your own dollars.
Sounds good. Then I would tend to lean towards Pride.
I
would concur.
Yeah, I just think those lights need to be able to dim those things, because in my opinion, it's an accident waiting to happen. Those things are just so bright. Anyway, a motion would be in order then, if there's no further discussion. Go ahead, David.
This would be not to exceed 42.
It
Or
would be, it
42,800.
would be 42,803,
803?
69, something like that.
All right. Well, I
65.
so move that we approve to upfit two 2024 Tahoes using Arizona Emergency Products.
No, Pride.
Oh,
Oh, Pride, I'm sorry, with Pride, not to exceed $42,869 approximately as presented.
that's close enough. I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, and thank you, and I think we did right.
By the way, I can't open up my stuff. That's why I'm trying to the figures. I can't open my stuff up.
Okay. With that, we'll go into agenda item 5, County Administrator.
Thank you. I'll be brief in my explanations. I think the only way to start this discussion is with a huge debt of gratitude to Supervisor Gomez. I seldom in my career have seen someone so tenacious to try and achieve a worthy goal. And if there's a stone left unturned, it's only because it's bigger than the Titanic. Other than that, everything has been done. We previously discussed this and based on direction previously given by the board, I've given the board 2 options on proposed motions. The second one is based on a deadline given to us by the seller that the board would need to commit to purchasing Tyler Farms by the 14th of July. The other one is a terminate motion to close interest. So this is basically addressing whether or not the county would continue to pursue an attempt to buy or facilitate Tyler Farms for housing development. And certainly I'll stand for any questions.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just, I would prefer the second motion. That's my preference with the conversation I had.
And David, I echo Derek's sentiments about tenacity that you've had. I just don't see any future. We're just not going to get water there. Even though there's all the water in the world underneath the land, we're not going to get it. And I would hate to put the county in a position where later on, because if people are sued later and lose water, they're going to come after. If we were to purchase that, they're going to come after the county. And I know our job, fiduciary responsibility, is to protect the county, and I just don't see a path forward on that. I think it's time to let it go, and I'm just being brutally honest.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate that I think we all wanted this to happen, and we all wanted this to become a reality. But the reality is that it's not going to happen based on the lack of water and or the ability to use that water. And I don't think it would be the right decision to make for the taxpayers of Green Lake County to buy land that might not ever, come to fruition or that we could ever build on or use all that water that's under there. So based on that information, I'm going to make a motion. And I move that Green Lake County formally close all interest in and end all efforts to purchase the Tyler Farms property.
I'm going to second that. I just don't see a future. And we have a motion and a second. Is Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in opposition, please indicate by saying nay.
Aye.
Okay, a motion passes. We will now go to agenda item 6. Mr. Rapier.
Thank you. Mercifully, the legislature has adjourned and closed their session, sine die. The bills that were passed and signed by the governor will become effective in September, 90 days after the close of the session. So, and I forget which day it closed. I think it was the 27th and the 26th of June. And then 90 days from there, the laws will become effective. There are some things that will create some questions in application. For example, there are a few election laws or things that affected election laws that won't be in effect by the primary, but may be in effect at the general. And so Bianca and I had that discussion yesterday. We'll be going through and making sure she will primarily, along with her colleagues around the state, and making sure that any new procedures passed will be implemented as they were intended in statute. Other than that, the budget, as we know, we've already talked about. We've addressed the obvious direct impacts to Greenlee County, and those have been built into the budget. Indirect impacts we won't see until the end of and as we get into the year, and those I worry most about are where they did cuts to agencies. They're generally on the scale of about 4%, which is not very much. But if there are services that they can no longer perform, they may try to roll that that service and say, county, you've got to do it. So we're watching that on several fronts. The other area that they did not address that has been high on our priority list was probation funding. That was not addressed. The governor has directed the use of ARPA funds for a one-time shot of cash into the probation department, but that will only cover the current fiscal year. Well, yeah, current now, 24-25. Short of that, the other big elephant in the room they did not address was water. And there were attempts to try and address groundwater management, both by basin as well as by structure and how you can manage those. None of the governor's ideas got a bill assigned or a bill assigned with a hearing, and none of the legislature's bills that they came through with got signed by the governor. So essentially nothing of substance happened with water. There was talk at one point of calling a special session. I don't know how you get a special session in an election year when your elections in November and people will now be out campaigning hard, both for the primary and then into the general. And generally speaking, special sessions are called when you already have your votes lined up. And at this point, there have been many points in this legislative session where the governor and the legislature couldn't agree if the sun was coming up or going down. So I don't know. The worry is, of course, that the governor has said that if the legislature won't act the way she wants, she may start doing things on her own. We haven't heard that recently, but we may start hearing it again soon. But with that, that's really the only news left really coming out of the legislature.
Derek, come back to the water. The governor, when she first went in, formed a state water policy, and they come up with recommendations. And those were some of the ideas that the governor pitched at the legislature. And I know water's a very touchy subject, as we well know, even in this county. And some of the water policy members felt like the governor didn't fight hard enough for what they thought would be some solutions. And water's going to be around. We all know what it means to our lives, our livelihood, and it's gonna be a tough one to solve, but yes, there's a lot of discontent and disagreement on both sides of the aisle, so thank you. Anything else,
No.
Bianca?
Today, our first board meeting, tomorrow, as our recorder mentioned, is early voting. Starts tomorrow, like for Thursday, our offices are closed. Next week is the NACO conference, the 12th through the 15th. Junior rodeo on the 13th Saturday. The Chamber of Commerce has their Meet the Candidates Night, also on the 13th at the Clifton Social Club. Our second board meeting is July 16th.
Did we move that?
No, that is when we said it, and we
Right.
published that as adoption of our final budget.
Okay, I be flying back, and then the next 2 days I have WIFA.
Will you be in a position you can call in and vote on the
I
final budget?
I should be able to. I'll call in.
Okay,
It's, what is there, 3 hours difference?
yes.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
so,
would be 11 on the East Coast.
yeah, I should be able to make that. Okay, thank you. Apologize for that. I should have caught it earlier, but I'll be able to call it.
Maybe we can move the meeting up to 9 o'clock, maybe? Give him more time. What time?
Well, our challenge is that we've posted
We'll-
and we have to hold a hearing.
Hey, just have it and it'll be 8 o'clock, so it'll be 11 o'clock back there. I can make that.
And we'll get you the Zoom link and everything you need.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize
And
for that.
no, it's I should have caught it. My bad.
I thought we had changed that.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, my bad. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, can you confirm, so the meeting is on the 16th of July?
16th at 8 o'clock, yes.
That's what I have on my calendar. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. I should have caught that earlier.
Okay, on July 17th, Wednesday is WIFA, Renzi Schools.
See, I have the 23rd.
July 24th.
I had the 23rd on my calendar. But hey,
Maybe it got changed when they moved everything up.
We bumped the election up a week.
Yeah.
yeah,
That
'cause-
I don't recall. But at this point, we're locked in there.
and that's fine. I know am I doing, that's probably why, because I have the 23rd on my calendar.
Too.
All right.
Okay, no problem. We'll make it work. Sorry about that. That was my, okay.
July 30th is election day, primary elections. No CSA, no county managers the month of July, going into August. August 1st is the SEGO meeting. Junior rodeo, August 3rd, Saturday. Duncan schools start August 7th, Wednesday. Our board meeting for setting tax rates is on August 8th, Thursday, 8 o'clock. County managers on the 9th. And then Greenlee County Showdown with 4-H on August 10th. We'll have another board meeting on the 12th, Monday, to canvass the primary election. SEGO executive meeting on the 16th, and that will be hosted by Greenlee County. Cattle growers meeting on the 17th. I don't have a time for that. And then our second board or third board meeting is on August 20th, Tuesday. And WIFA on the 21st.
Yeah. The cattle growers meeting, don't they generally start at 10 and registration starts at 9? Isn't that correct, Ron?
Yeah, that is correct. And I had gotten information from Clay Gomez regarding that.
the Board of Supervisors meetings, so there's 3 scheduled in.
Yeah.
Yes.
one
The
is-
rule policy forum is on the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
We will address only one issue on the eighth, and that is setting tax rates. That's we can meet statutory deadlines. We
Okay.
knew with this election moving around, that we would have a wonky August. So like I say, if you're at the rural policy, again, we can arrange to have you call in. There'll only be the one item, you'll have the tax rates in advance. And that's the one where we'll set our tax rates at the budget on the 16th. But we set the tax rates, adopt them for all of the other taxing entities on the 8th.
Good.
So we will, and like I said, it'll just be a single agenda item.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, and that's why we go over this calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And that's all I have for August, unless anybody else has anything to add. September 2nd, our offices are closed due to Labor Day. So our board meeting will be on Wednesday, September 4th. County managers on the 13th, our second board meeting on the 17th. Small counties, ECO and WIFA on the 18th.
And county fair should be in there someplace.
13th.
And-
September 19th.
Start on the 19th.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Go ahead and have that, for our next one, and that's all I have, CSA on the 19th also. And that's all I have for September.
Okey dokey, well. Ron, do you have anything you need to add to the calendar?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
David? Yeah, I don't know. We have the fair. And
I just want to mention that secret meeting we're hosting.
The council meeting, not the administrative one, right? The council.
Council, but I don't know, is it Duncan or Clifton? Because I think we hosted the last one here at county.
You know what?
We gotta make arrangements.
I'll get hold of Keith and find out.
Okay.
Or I'll just get hold of Rudy and Terry and we'll make sure we have it.
Okay.
You're right, we hosted the last,
Right,
we may have hosted the last 2.
yeah, maybe the last 2. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, if there's nothing else under agenda item 6B, we will go to agenda item 7, consent agenda.
I so move that we approve the consent agenda as posted.
I second that.
We have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very, very much. Supervisor reports. Ron?
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
I don't have any.
David? Well, as you know, the NACO is coming up next week, and I'm sure you guys have looked at a mountain of resolutions that come through on your committees. And we met yesterday on the public lands, and I think we have 22 of them. So that's one meeting we went to. As far as WIFA, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, as you well know, the legislature had a deficit. They swept $490 million away from the WIFA, which we thought was going to help build the direction and future of water. It was water augmentation. Anyway, so about a third of the budget came out of WIFA's funds that we hope to use to augmentate or enhance water supplies in the Arizona. So I can't say we're not disappointed on that, but we also realize the legislature is the ones that can set policy and also give funds, and they can give it and they can take it away. And we know that well. Anyway, that's all I have to report. If we'll take about a 5-minute break and then we'll come back into capital improvement plan work session. Thank you. Okay, we'll come back into regular session and we will now go to agenda item 9. We have a capital improvement plan work session, and with that, I'll turn the time over to Derek, but first we want to appreciate all those employees and department heads that have put time in on this, and I think, the capital improvement plan, this was something that we've tried to get better at. We used to have it used to be just a wish list, and now I think we're getting some of these projects done, and we appreciate Derek and his staff and department heads, Tony and David and all those, that some of these things are coming to fruition, and now we just need to maybe fine tune this thing, and that's what this work session's all about. So Derek, if you'll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I do want to thank the staff. We've gotten input from those who are actually working on the projects and whose responsibility it is to get them done. And that's been tremendously helpful. As you recall, when we set this tiered system up, the idea was that tier 1 would be stuff that we think we can get done in a year or substantially done in a year. And so that becomes the highest priorities. Tier 2 are those projects that we want to begin thinking about the next 2 to 3 years to stage them, plan them, prepare for them. And then tier 3 are those more aspirational projects that we don't want to forget, but we're not ready to move on in the next 2 to 3, 4 years. Supervisor Gomez raised a good question that it hadn't occurred to me. And that is, do the listing of the projects in tier 1, 2, and 3 represent a priority list? And in my mind, they did not, but I realized that it certainly could be viewed that way. I rearranged tier 1 a little bit, and I'll tell you why, not by way of priority, but by what kind of involvement we're going to have. So projects listed 1, 2, 3 on the list right now are those that are going to require substantial interaction between public works, roads, engineering, and so forth. Projects 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are more passive. In other words, we're not doing the design study on the lighting of the runway. We're not doing that stuff. We are coordinating with state agencies to get those things done. Now, the landfill is one that number 4, it does require more of us, but right now that's primarily interacting with state lands. And to his credit, our engineer Reed Larson has been very patient with them. They are a agency that takes some patience when you work with them. And so I simply rearranged these to put those where our staff or our contracting is going to be high at the list. They're not higher priority. They're simply ones where our involvement is going to be more. Now, the other thing I had asked is that we scale back our ambition a little bit so that we can get these things done while continuing to get our core functions done. That will require that we both utilize our staff effectively, but it also requires we need to identify early where we need to contract out and where we can do stuff in-house. For example, in a major project, we need to have the key players meeting once a week, once every other week at the latest, to check on progress, make new assignments, catch up where we're lagging, those kinds of things. You'll see there, I've got a category listed as proposed projects to add to tier 1. I'll address them in turn. The Loma Linda Park amenities, these would be amenities that would be added to the Loma Linda Park right now. A pavilion, I call it a pavilion, you can call it an awning, but the picnic tables are lined up, and this would be a covering for those picnic tables that would cover all of them with a single covering, if you will. Pickleball courts, again, now we have tennis courts out there that also have basketball hoops on them. I don't know and Supervisor Gomez, you'd know, I have never seen someone play tennis out there. But then again, people aren't playing tennis like they used to. So whether we convert those to pickleball courts, we still have basketball standards on there, so people and I imagine kids do play basketball out there on them. Or whether we add additional pickleball courts would be part of that project. And then a splash pad. One of the challenges of a splash pad at Loma Linda is there's a lot of goat heads out there. So we'd want to think about an apron around it. So of grass or turf or something, so that it's, you're not setting your child down on goat heads to walk into the splash pad and do that. Recirculation of splash pad water is another one. We don't want to end up just pumping that well all the time to keep the splash amenities going. The other one, facilitate and acquire land for housing. We listed last year as a tier 2 project simply because of the time frame that it takes to get this project underway. We have been focusing staff's efforts primarily on the area near Loma Linda and Bertie Lee called the Y. There are several different areas that could be subject to development. There's a section of flat land between Ward Canyon and Skyline. There's lots of flat developable ground to the south of Skyline and Loma Linda. We have attempted to try and interact with state land to find out what had been done previously by another set of developers to try and see if we could piggyback and shorten that process. We're not getting a lot of response, and what we will probably try to do is use the board's connections and set up a meeting and try and get that going. Having talked with Mr. Larson, he's not certain that even if we identify the same parcels that we save ourselves a lot of time. And maybe, and there is some concern that they chose parcels that we maybe think weren't the best.
Derek, before we pursue that, there's water.
Is that a question to the universe or one of us specifically?
I just want to know, is there water? Because if have we checked that there's.
So there are two, 3 things we're doing, and I don't.
I'm not trying to be funny. That's
No.
a serious question.
Well, unfortunately, as we learned a very, very hard lesson, that's the first question to ask, not the last. And so the answer is we're in the works. So we know, for example, that Bertie Lee and Loma Linda have independent water systems. There has been talk since Cactus LLC bought those two, and they own it. It's their decision to join them or not. There's at least one well that we're aware of that the Cactus LLC owns that is not being utilized in the Bertie Lee water system. And then we have our well as a data point as well that we dropped down there at the ball field, the 42 gallon a minute well. We have contracted with is reading here. So if I get this wrong, Reed, you correct me, but it's a hydrogeologist that essentially will do what we might call a tabletop or paper exercise. That's manageable. We looked into this a couple of years ago, and to drill a test well would be about $100,000 2 years ago, and you cannot use it. I mean, you fill it back in once you've used it. So we're going to do first a paper study to see what the likelihood of water is, and as much as we can learn about that. I don't think we necessarily wait to engage with state land. We can start a couple of processes simultaneously. But if, for example, that hydrogeologist report comes back and said there ain't any extra water there, then I think that would inform our decision whether or not we go forward. But we didn't want to stop our interaction with state land until we had that. So we're running those on parallel tracks, but that'll take probably 2 months to complete. In the meantime, we'll identify, and my suggestion is that we identify land that we think is feasible, and then pursue state land with what we think is feasible. Having said that, I would emphasize again that we know our strategy going into it, that we'll need to think about things such as Do we make this available? Do we facilitate the purchase by private developers? Do we buy it ourselves? Because when you're there at the time of the auction and we haven't made that decision, that's gonna be, well, it won't be able to be done. We won't, if we don't have a strategy in place. The other thing that I would, a wrinkle on this that we don't have with otherwise private land is once the auction opens, the highest bidder wins. And so, I think it was Supervisor Gomez pointed out that I don't know if they'd be interested here, but the Nature Conservancy shows up at these things. Whether they're interested in flat land miles away from a riparian area, that's not typically their target. But they have acquired pieces of land that they thought were valuable. But once that auction opens, it goes to the highest bidder.
And part of the reason why my question and it was so you would explain the strategy behind what we're doing. And I know to the north of there, water's hard to find. And yet you can go south and there's all kinds of water. And so.
Well, and particularly as you get out to the Greenlee Mountain Ranchettes to the east of this area, it's hit and miss. There's some folks have some serviceable wells. There's some folks who have wells that you work with and plan for, and there are folks that have dry holes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that.
Well, I like I say, I think if nothing else, we know which question to ask first. And we're in the process of doing all we can to do that. LLC, Cactus LLC has been very cooperative. They've been very forthcoming. They've issued a letter of, what do they call it, Reed? It's intent to serve. It basically says we will engage with you. And so there's some positive signs, but the actual question of is there enough water? We don't have a good answer on that, but we're working on it.
Okay.
So my recommendation is that even if we knew there was water today and we started moving forward, we are probably a year at best before we get to an auction. And that's probably optimistic based on our discussions when we went to go visit with the state land. 15 to 18 months is a optimistic window for that. Reed has been working with them continuously on the landfill. Hayden has been trying to work with an individual there. Mediocre responsiveness. And so that's why we thought maybe a kickstart with state lands. But whether we move this for purposes of this discussion, whether we move this into tier 1 or keep it in tier 2, obviously we would put more resources and press harder if it's in tier 1. We will not be able to complete it within a year, I think, to be very candid.
But Derek, in lieu of what this county needs in the housing, I think we wouldn't be very good stewards if we did move it along this just as fast as we can. But that's my feelings. Ron, do you have any different feelings, or David?
Well, that's why I suggested we move it into tier 1.
Yeah, I would agree. Leave it in tier 1, even though we probably won't be able to accomplish it in a year, but we want to be able to focus on it, making sure that we have water, making sure that if the state came out tomorrow and said, hey, we're going to have a auction on some land there at the Y, well, we want to be able to just react to it and go. So we want to keep that on the pinnacle of our list, I think.
What I will do then in moving that forward is one, well, we've already started in the works of getting more information on water. Secondly, what we'll do is identify and likely Supervisor Gomez will be the lead on this, but what I'll do is bring it back to the board and saying, here are the areas where we think we have to focus, get the board's approval on that, and then probably just simply open up a new application and get the process started anew with state land. Use what we can, if anything, and if not, move forward. But I'll move those work sessions early on in the process so that we have a solid strategy of what we're going to do, what we're willing to do, and where we say we've done all we can.
And setting up that meeting with
State land,
with
yes.
state land and getting Hayden involved in it. situation so you can get to know her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then, on the Loma Linda Park amenities, is that something we want to move in tier one, partially into tier one? What's the board's pleasure on that?
Well, my pleasure is that that's been long awaiting, and I'd like to get on that personally.
I concur. It's, you know, and to say that we're in a position because of what happened with the COVID money and stuff. We need to get these projects done because what'll happen if we don't, we'll find some other use, and I don't know. I think it's time some of these amenities are used for our constituents.
And there's movement right now up there, as I mentioned to you this morning, that structure's going up in the park right now with those folks putting that canopy over the playground equipment.
It was a long wait for the materials to come in, but boy, when they get in, they get after it, those folks, they do. Okay, and I assume, Mr. Campbell, you're good with that too? I've got direction from the board.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely say that, and because I think it's important to move that up, but we may not be able to accomplish all of that, especially with the fairground park redesign, the finishing up of the ball fields there at Loma Linda, and then the public works building, or public works engineering facility. I just want to make sure that we're not putting too much on the plate and not being able to get it accomplished. But I do think that it's important to rise, keep that on our tier one, and we hope we get it accomplished.
I think, for example, on the state lands, that's not going to involve public works and roads. On some of these other projects, we're going to have a lot more involvement with public works and roads and so forth, or contracting out. So I think this probably is the limit of our ambition, if we move these two projects in. And David, Reed, Tony, are these things we feel like we can get done or substantially done in the following year if we move those two projects up?
I believe so.
Okay, it's going to require some extra work, and like I said, we're going to identify early where we need to contract. Like I say, the Ward brothers assembling that pavilion, we've seen them work now 3 times in the recent months. When they have materials, they get after it. So there may be things that we need to contract out and do it that way. The other one is the landfill C&D cell, which
Before we go on from
Yes.
these tiers, and I hope that when we build these things, we build them right. We build them with enough capacity for that they'll be useful and we won't have major problems. And I don't know, sometimes you can spend $100 now and save $10,000 in the future. And if we build them right, we won't have the headaches and that's what we're trying to alleviate. And we want them nice. I know you guys get tired. I sound like a broken record, but build them nice, build them right, and build them with what the needs are in the future. So I just wanted to say that, and please, I'm not trying to be unappreciative or anything, but I hope when you do that you'll have those goals. Those are, I think, the board's goals. Anyway, thank you.
with respect to moving the landfill, our landfill operations manager, David Manus, believes we can get another year or 2, maybe more, out of our current C&D cell. We are currently waiting on the results of a study we commissioned to help us decide whether or not we continue to take a segregated approach where we have a C&D cell and a municipal waste operation. If we combine those, then getting a landfill C&D cell doesn't matter. We will probably pivot and change the way we run the landfill. For now, David thinks that we've got at least another year. So our proposal is to move that off of 1 and down into tier 2.
And David, you're pretty confident because a landfill, we need one and it's functional and you know, you've managed that very well for us, and I just don't want us to get in a bind later on. So we'll use your expertise on that and read, because we certainly don't want to get down the road and put this off and all of a sudden we're in a bind and we're doing things that create a lot of problems. So if you two are good with that, well, you know, I can see, yes. But I certainly don't want, and I don't think this board wants us to get into a bind if there's any possibility that there would be a problem. Go ahead, David.
We could leave it there. Richard, another question that I had was the interest on our money that we accrued there at the landfill. If we were to wait a year or two, you know, I got with Renee on it. It's not as much as I thought it might be. I thought maybe waiting a year would, you know, be worth the time and the money. But either way would work.
Okay, and go ahead, Derek.
The challenge we have with and don't get me wrong, we will have landfill discussions throughout this coming fiscal year. Like I say, we're at a critical decision point where we have been classified as a small landfill, and there's a set of rules that apply to that, and that's based primarily, not meaning to oversimplify this, but it's based primarily on volume, what we're taking in, and we're in the middle of that study. So whether we dig a new C&D cell or whether we don't, we're still going to have to go back and review our landfill operation and how we run it and what's the most effective way to run it. You recall we received a large influx of money when they were doing the soils project here in the Clifton-Morenci area and hauling dirt out. We want to keep that intact until the C&D cell decision is made. So that if we do a C&D, we've got the money to build it. They're expensive holes, as you recall, about $500,000 for what we dug last time. And on the other side of that, we want to make sure that if we have that and we transition to a new way of operating the landfill, we've got some money to help make that transition. So, like I say, we're not done talking about landfills, but my suggestion is we move that down to tier 2 so we continue to prepare for it in 2 to 3 years would be my suggestion.
I concur.
That's fine.
I'm good. Yeah.
Just off the top of your head, how much has the landfill increased in volume over the last, let's say, 5 years? You know, and if you don't have it, you can get it to us later.
You have an idea?
Okay.
We could probably look at that and we'd be measuring it by the number of trucks coming in.
Has the cells that we're having swap build, you know, dig out for us, have they been the same size every time they come and do one? This one actually was a little bit bigger, because that would tell us kind of what we were dumping in.
Well,
and in a period of time and stuff.
You'll recall one of the things that put us behind the 8 ball within 2 to 3 months after we got that hole dug was we got 15,000 ties, railroad ties, right from the get-go. And it went from the floor to the top of the hole along an entire wall, as I recall. And it just chewed up a lot of, and as a result, next time they started changing out ties, we said, we're not taking your ties. And so we've been careful that doesn't need to go in a landfill like that. And so that caught us flat-footed the last time, and we're committed to not let that happen again. But unfortunately, it gave us a false sense of how much room we had because they chewed it up almost immediately.
It's called a learning curve.
And it was a steep and brutal one. Yes.
Probably sold all those ties.
Yeah, there were lots of good ones in there. There are a lot of them that were splintered. But yeah, that was That was one we did not anticipate so quickly. Moving on to tier 2. This is where most of the activity has come about in terms of suggestions for new projects. And this is where we'll be looking to plan for the next 2 to 3 year horizon. Some of these projects next year will move into tier 1. Some of them will remain on tier 2 and develop and mature, if you will. The first one, we will move, of course, up to acquire land. We'll move that up to tier 1. The second one, fairgrounds updates. These are not the park redesign, but these are facility updates. The PA system, for example, that would integrate all of the sound systems in the barn, in the arena, potentially out at the ball fields if we need them. That way you could do a single public service announcement like, hey, there's a storm cell coming in, or a safety issue that we need to announce. Coolers in the B and C building. We currently have swamp coolers on the east side of that building that they blow directly into the building. Sometimes they spit mist and water, and sometimes they, if they haven't been run for a while, they spit, bugs and dust. So this would be replace them with industrial coolers, probably a duct system so that it cuts down on that debris that we're used to in evap coolers.
Derek, in 2, 3, and 4, that is still going back up to tier 1. All these are already, we know more, we know where the parking's gonna be. So we have a master plan of for the fairgrounds. And this is just, okay, we do the ball fields, this, that, and the other. Okay, next year we're gonna cover the parking lot, whatever. But the master plan is there, correct?
Yes, and you'll
Okay,
see on one
I-
of these specifically, I asked, do we include this in the fair redesign? Now, specific buildings like the bar remodel has been on our list for at least a couple of years, maybe more. We could certainly include that in a master program where we work on that, and we may not get them all done at once. But I know, for example, some of the grant funds that we are applying for, there's limits, but it's annual limits. So we could maybe get some this year and maybe some next year.
Okay.
If you would like us to include this in the overall fairgrounds redesign, we can do that.
I guess my question is there's a master plan of when we finish with all the projects out there, what that fairground's gonna look like, what equipment we've gonna need, or this, that, and the other, or are we? So I guess you can break the master plan down into phases. Is that what we're doing here?
That's really the question that I'm asking the board, because at this point, we have individual projects. We have a master plan with the park redesign, with the ball fields and the amenities and the secondary arena and the parking and so forth. That's part of a footprint design.
Okay.
Some of these things, I'm thinking about the exhibit building floor.
Okay.
That's been out there for a long time. To the extent that that's part of a master ongoing plan, yeah, it's been out there. We've been aware of that problem for many years. It frankly has not been beneficial to replace that floor. You can paint it once a year for a whole lot less money than you could chip it out and replace it. And I visit with my predecessors, it just says, that floor, it's been a problem forever, but you could paint it for a couple of $1,000 and it could cost, what do we figure, Tony? What was our ballpark if you chipped it out and report it? Hundreds of thousands? Over 100. And so, but that doesn't mean we're not still looking for solutions. In fact, we've become aware of some solutions just recently we're going to look into that would pour a type of a coating over the top of it to smooth it, and it should be fine even if the cement stays wet.
Yeah. Well, I guess, and I appreciate this, but like I say, some of those projects have been on there, and maybe it's time eventually in the next 2 or 3 years those come fruition, because I just think it's time to get some of these things done.
The one I asked or had the red note on there specifically was the parking, because part of the footprint design we've talked about, parking will be increased, and so forth. And so with that, that may be the right time to include the lighting as we build that parking lot out. And so that would make sense on the footprint design that we've talked about. Remodeling the barn may be a next year project, or, if we come back with a solution on the floor, we may well come back and say, do you want to elevate this and get this done now? Because we've got a solution. Like I said, we don't have an answer, but we've got at least two options we're looking into on that floor.
I'm
Mike,
sorry, Eric, have we gone out and spoke to the experts that pour concrete and everything on what might be the best and better solution for that floor
Tony?
without having to go through the major expense of $100,000?
$100,000 was concrete contractor that was just gonna chip it out and remove it. Flooring would be on top of that. I had a couple of guys out there that look at it, now they found out that it's leaking water.
It was what, Tony?
Leaking water up through.
Where's the water coming from? When it rains and stuff?
Could be the rain, drainage.
There's areas down there, David, you can dig a post hole, come back and there'll be water in it.
Maybe that's where we need to build some houses.
In other places, you can dig a hole to the center of the earth and.
And they're not trying to think.
Well, I think we ought to look a little deeper into that and see, I mean, there's all kinds of things out in the world now that you can, remedy something like that.
I know a lot of those, and I don't
Yeah.
mean to bring
Anyway,
areas,
just a suggestion,
they resurface those all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And if you're aware of a product, I say Tony recently became aware of a product. I've been hearing about a product that might work. We're gonna inquire on both those, but if you're
Yeah.
aware of a product, absolutely. And I know Tony and I have had this discussion at least a dozen times over the years of how you do that. And so the concrete itself seems to be sound. It just, it's porous. And so, but yeah, we'll
Okay.
continue to try and work on that. My suggestion is that we include the lighting and the parking as part of the fairgrounds footprint redesign, since we'll be doing it all at the same time. And then the bar and the floor and the various upgrades of the PA, that we work those in over the next couple of years. That'd
Let
be
me
my
ask you
suggestion.
this.
Yeah, you
The
can't
crow's
beat up
nest-
number 4.
The crow's nest at the over the rodeo grounds.
That's actually on our list to talk about a little bit later down.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I just want to be there.
All right.
So Derek,
Yeah, please
no,
go ahead, Ron.
I think I agree with your approach. I think that we probably ought to lump the fairgrounds parking and lighting into the, into the remodel or the redesign, because I think doing it at that time makes the most sense. But I would also suggest on the doing the fairgrounds upgrades and the fairgrounds bar and the, exhibit building floor, leaving that on the tier 2 projects. If things come up, we can always move them, but that's the approach that I would take.
And Ron, I think that's the same approach that I want, but I just want to make sure that we're checking all the boxes and getting some of these things done.
With item number 5, the courthouse improvements, we were talking about installing a sprinkler system, and we may still do that, but that's fairly small. That's really not a capital project. That's something that we could rent a trench or dig a trench and put in the piping. We're just talking about right around here, around the old courthouse. So we'll take that part off. The painting of the trim painting is not hard. Getting 25, 30 feet up in the air to paint it is a challenge. And so, and that may be facilitated depending on whether we can walk the man lift up somewhere close to the building. Maybe not. Maybe we hang somebody over the top. I don't know how we do it. But that's something as our paint gets older and older, we will want to plan for and get done. Airport improvements, I visited with Reed about this. There is a master plan that you can redesign. Those run, let me figure, $500,000 to redesign your airport. And there are some changes that the master plan that was developed does not track well with what's happening now. It's primarily a question of volume. We don't have enough flights every day, so that we are now no longer we are what they call an unclassified airport, which means a lot of the money that we had access to when Phil was doing these projects, and he was masterful at taking a little of our money and a lot of somebody else's money and getting these things done. But we don't qualify for that anymore. So the suggestion is now is to change not our master plan, but our layout plan. There are swaths of land near the runway, and then the original plan called for a cross runway, which is not uncommon in busier airports. You got a way to land into the wind no matter where you go. But the likelihood of us ever building a cross runway in our lifetime is very, very small. So we would probably instead look for grant money to support an airport layout plan change. And our engineers at Dibble seem to think that that's much more cost effective and something that could be done. We could plan for the next couple of years.
Because that when they scaled us down, it was due to the based on the number of landings that occurred there.
Landings and permanently based aircraft, as I understand, right?
Yeah, there's a handful of criteria, but the primary driver is the number of based aircraft. Yeah, grant both.
Yep. Moving down to the new ones that have been proposed.
Does the helicopter count?
Does the helicopter count? Yeah, maybe. Maybe get a bunch of very large model planes. I don't know. It's a difficult thing, and like I say, I don't know that our volume or our residency has changed a whole lot, but the bar has moved. And as a result, we used to pick up crumbs that we shared with another, handful of airports being at the bottom tier. We've dropped off that tier, and the crumbs of the crumbs about all we get, which isn't much. David and Reed have both talked about, we have a pit that we use that's on BLM land. It's west of Highway 75 on the divided highway. It's called Niagara Canyon. And we've been using it for years. It's been a very effective pit, but there are some restrictions that are changing that may make that more difficult. And so the suggestion is that we begin the process of acquiring some land over by the airport and develop a new materials pit. It has some of the same features that the other pit has. It's a drainage, so it brings in new material pretty frequently. And we would have access to the materials to mix the kind of AB that we use quite a bit. So our suggestion is we move that up into tier 2. That's a new project, so we include it on tier 2, and we begin the process with state land to acquire essentially what would amount to a new materials pit. It's located, in the center part of the county, and not far from our garage and public works facility. Remodeling fairgrounds B and C buildings. This is a little bit different project. So our main exhibit buildings, the siding on the east side of that building is wearing out, and we should probably look at replacing it. It should be done in phases. So for example, we don't want to build an awning on that east side that would cover where people, eat and get food and just stop and visit until we replace the siding. We would also move the coolers from that side of the building to the back side of the building. And Tony, you stop me anytime if I'm wrong on this, but we would move the coolers, put in probably industrial coolers, and then move them to the back of the building so that then an awning can be built in the front. This will take some planning. This will take some timing as well. And so our suggestion is that if we add this, we add it as a tier 2 project. perhaps tier 3, but I think we could plan for this and have it done in the next 2 to 3, maybe outside 4 years. Our restrooms, which are now beautiful, and people I'm sure will want to go in and just hang out. Maybe not, but they do get warm. And in the winter, they can be kind of cool. So one of the proposals is to figure out a way to heat and cool that. I don't know that people will use the bathroom whether it's hot or not. Kids during the fair will go in and change and get ready to show their animal, and they're busy, even for junior rodeos or other events. But if we want to include some sort of climate control, some way to heat and cool it, that would be something we would consider. Loma Linda Park accessories we talked about, those are moved up to 1. Ward Canyon ball field upgrade, and this would essentially be making sure that we can handle a high water event on Ward Canyon, so that the field's designed to take it. So there's 2 fields. One is fairly well developed. It's got the dugouts and the base pads and stuff. The other one has a backstop. But our suggestion would be is we take the second field, turn it into parking so that we get people off of Ward Canyon. Right now, they park along the road there, and it's not a good situation. There's a little bit of parking up above the more developed field. There's not a real good way to walk down to the field, and you encounter a fence. You have to walk clear around the field to get in. But our suggestion was that over the next year or 2, we develop a plan to upgrade Ward Canyon, check out the feasibility of getting enough water up there to keep grass on it. That would be interaction with, and they've indicated a willingness to do it, but getting that pipe down big enough and deep enough that it doesn't get damaged in a flood event, or when we're cleaning up after a flood event. Those are the things we'd want to start planning for. And I think it was on tier 3 last year. It's suggested we move it up to tier 2, which would mean we become more active in the planning of it. The next 4 were suggestions that came up to improve our agriculture part of the fairgrounds footprint. One is a sun cover for bleachers that are near the, and again, David, you correct me if I get these wrong, but essentially cover the bleachers that are near the chutes, the bucking chutes. Is that right? Yeah, on the north side of the arena. It'd be some sort of a permanent cover when they're doing stuff during the middle of the day. The arena crow's nest, we know that it's in bad shape. It's aged. One suggestion is to perhaps put a Connex box up on top of there. We want to make sure that the existing pipes and stuff would hold it, or maybe we simply rebuild it. There are probably some things we could do. I understand that the trim can cause splinters. There may be a window out, so there may be some things we can patch through until we get a more permanent, comprehensive solution to that. But adding the crow's nest and some kind of a solution would be one thing we're considering.
You know, the where you hook the panels that come down, the screws that actually just split that piece of wood in several different places. So, buy a 1x2 piece of wood and simply replace that would be something simple, very cost effective, and that's where a lot of the splinters are coming from, because that thing is just, it's had screws and it's just set throwing all kinds of beats, and yeah, the window on the to the north, I guess that's out.
We could always use duct tape.
You know what? I happen to have a roll.
No, but those are things that we can probably do a couple of maintenance items to get them through. But the suggestion is we rethink that whole concept. It's well used, and when they're up there, it needs to be something that works well.
But Tony, they love your chairs. Thank you.
On the horse stalls, Lindsay has pointed out that we need to continue to offer horse stalls. The existing structures we have made a lot of sense when we were running races, or even when people would come and train the horses. but they sit kind of right in the middle of other development opportunities. And so what we need to do, and this would take some planning, but essentially we would figure out how to build horse stalls or make them temporary in a way that could accommodate contestants and folks, you know, down there. We have had occasionally some folks just come in and move an animal into one of those stalls that are existing. Lindsay doesn't always know about that. There's just a horse over there. But how we do that in the most cost-effective way would be something we would like a year or two to plan and think through. Where they would go, how we would manage those. We want to be careful, for example, we don't build things that are so temporary that our panels walk off. That's been an issue sometimes. And so we want to think through how the best way to do that, whether we provide shade, whether we don't provide shade. I did not know this. Lindsay informed me that a lot of those who are really into the rodeo stuff, they not only bring their fancy trailers that hold horses and people, but they also bring their own stall along with them. And so that's an area where I think we have expertise in-house to help us figure out a plan, but the idea would be to put this on tier 2 so we start coming up with a plan, knowing how many we might need, those kind of things. And then the last is the horse warm-up arena. And once I clarified with David what we're talking about, that's already on our footprint. That's the arena that we're going to rotate to accommodate a squared off parking area. That would be our secondary arena. It would be a warm-up arena. It would be an event where you could do things like, you know, goat tying or pole bending or barrel racing. And so David's going to get some square footage and try to figure out how much pipe and stuff we'd need. My suggestion is we move on that as part of the fairgrounds footprint upgrade, and then we do it sooner rather than later. I don't know that we'll get it done by the fair. I think that would be very ambitious, but I think we can get it done over the next year as part of our overall master plan.
Okay, but on these new are they're proposed for tier 2, correct?
Some, yes, but some like this warm-up stall really is included in our other thing.
Okay,
As they came in, I put them where they were suggested.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
On the horse stalls, how many is Lindsay proposing that? How many does she think is enough to put up there, Lindsay?
So I'm currently working with, we're talking about switching from Grand Canyon Pro Rodeo to Collegiate Rodeo. And so we're working with the Collegiate guy to see how many teams they have and what their need is going to be, because it's going to be different than what we've done in the past. But to get a general idea, between 25 and 45 would be a good start.
And would these be roughly the size of a panel? Square?
12 by 12 is our current size, and I would not suggest going smaller than 12 by 12. So,
Okay. And that's the covered ones in the buildings?
yes.
So that's 12 wide and 12 deep? Is that what that is?
Yeah, horses are pretty big.
Well, how much are can those be built out of the Connex boxes?
The
Just
reason
put,
why
just put, you know, dividers inside them? I don't know, the Connex, where do those Connex boxes go?
They're pretty expensive.
Well, if there's still some left from the border wall, they're pretty cheap. I'll say no more than we've had a source where we can get them fairly inexpensively. Whether that source is dried up or not, I don't know.
But a lot of those are you can build those out of panel and put shade over them.
Yeah.
Would be a lot cheaper than having.
But you want
something-
them open, you basically want them open, yeah.
Any
Lindsay, you
insights,
were gonna-
Lindsay?
So, I haven't asked anybody about the Connex boxes, but the complaints about the current stalls was that, the block kept kind of the heat in. And so if we could get some air in there, it'd be a little bit better.
Makes
I
sense.
currently am renting out 6 of the stalls, and I think that they're great. So we've done some revamping since we weren't using them for horses, and we had some smaller livestock, so lambs and pigs. We have about 5 to 6 of them right now that are being used, and so they're being multi-purpose and they're being used, and so it's been a great option.
So basically you want them open and you just want a metal rooftop on top of them.
Yeah, for horses, a 12 by 12 area as well. For cattle, we're doing 8 by 8 in the barn currently, but that's just because it's a short term. The horses really need at least a 12 by 12 space, but yeah, they want the covering for the roofing, and then they just want to be able to have airflow.
You know, back to the comment that Chairman Lunt made about building stuff that's gonna last out and be there for quite some time and build it right the first time. You know, maybe it's something a bid that we should get from Ward Brothers that work with metal and stuff. And I mean, it's just a matter of posts and putting an awning on top of them.
Well, and then, well, there's other things as well. One is do we do it out of panels? Do we do it some more permanent? The other question is, can we get water there to where we locate them? So that, I mean, obviously you can haul water, but if you've got faucets and spigots there, that'll make it better. And honestly, I feel about horse stalls like I do about arena dirt. I love them. I just don't know anything about them. And so, in that regard, I think, you know, planning it out and getting a good plan together would be very helpful,
Planning it out. Yeah.
including location.
Fail to plan, plan to fail.
Working with the vendor right now, and so we're gonna kind of see how they go with these steer pins, but it was a lot more advantageous for us to look at what they can do with these oil filled pipes. And so there's a lot of different options out there that we could really definitely plan to look at.
What's an oil filled pipe?
So it's, yeah, and so they are making them and to where you can move them with our skid steer, but that they could be portable, but not as portable as someone coming in and taking them in the middle of the night.
That appeals to me.
Build a dairy out of oil field pipe.
You recall when David and his group were working with the contractor to build out the bucking chutes and the stalls behind there. Some of that pipe just walked away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, pipe is ubiquitous. We may be looking at it right there on the highway, we wouldn't know it's that, so. But on the horse stalls, I think it does, and we need to make sure that the location integrates well with the other things that we're already doing. But I think there'll be room and place to do that, so. And that covers tier 2. Now, the AWAS was on, that is what does AWAS stand for, Reed?
Automated weather observation.
It's out at the airport. It helps pilots land somewhat. A lot of the data that we used to broadcast out is now available in other ways. Again, the funding that used to get one of those free every 20 years from FAA, but we no longer qualify for that. There may be a partnership we can work with on maybe replacing some of the components, but we're suggesting we take the AWAS off of our planning.
And that's just because of lack of funding.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Reed, but the system that we use, you know, that was 20 years ago was relevant. A lot of that stuff, you know, if you got the right app, you can get on your phone. Am I correct?
Okay,
Yeah. So
it's become obsolete.
obsolete-ish.
And so there's a thing called a present weather sensor on our AWAS that isn't functional right now, but other than that, the AWAS is functional. So it's not like it's completely broken. Still operational.
But would it be safe to say there's other options and for pilots or whoever uses this, and they probably have already gone to those?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then more broadly, the AWAS is another example of just infrastructure that exists out at the airport that isn't justified by the number of based aircraft or the traffic counts.
Okay, thank you.
To restate that, if you were building that airport new for the amount of traffic that it currently receives, you wouldn't have an AWAS, you wouldn't have a paved runway, you wouldn't have a taxiway, certainly would be considering a second roadway.
One of the things that, like I say, in the heyday, and to his credit, Mr. Ronald was very, very good at finding these grants, coupling a few of our dollars with a lot of somebody else's dollars, and we were able to build some stuff. We've run into a new reality now where we need to figure out ways to maintain what we've got. But I would say we are not in a build more, build bigger, build better mode right now. It's scrape together the dollars we can to keep what we've got in good condition. If at any point volume changes, then we could address that. With that, are you comfortable, other than integrating the ones that are already into tier 1, should we move these all into tier 2 that are suggested? Is that?
I'm fine with that. How about you, Ron?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
I will include these as finished packages in the final budget adoption, because this is the final piece. I'll put these rearranged today. And then when we print the final budget book, this will be in it as you've directed today. Tier 3, of course, is our most aspirational. It's a long horizon list. Some of these have been there for a long time. Some, and they're very relevant still. So we have a blue road yard. That's one of those where we'll have to look at it when an opportunity arises. Land doesn't sell up there very often. But it's not something we can forever ignore. Jail remodel, replace. The board has directed, we look at outsourcing options. But we will keep this on the tier 3 if that doesn't, turn out to be a viable option.
David, is the jail committee, I mean, I know we gave you direction to look at outsourcing and stuff, but
I've not asked for a jail committee meeting. I will do so after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The 3rd floor annex, this building was originally engineered, designed to put a 3rd floor on top of it. At this point, we haven't needed the additional office space. I think if we build the Public Works building, that will alleviate some office pressure here. If in the long run, the decision is to outsource incarceration services, then we've got a building there that could also be expanded rather than the expense of going up a 3rd floor here. One of the things nice about what we have here is, although you can see it if you're looking for it, this building does not dominate the more picturesque, historic courthouse. When you drive through town, that's what you see, not this. And if you put a 3rd floor, it would kind of like be Big Brother looking over the old building.
Be a crown, Derek, a
A
crown.
crown. We could build it like a crown. But I think we keep it on there, at least for the moment. Courthouse parking, that's very aspirational. There's always pressure for more parking. The idea was that if we acquired a lot or two across the street here on 5th, that we would perhaps build an elevated parking of some sort. There's plenty of pressure here, particularly when there's a jury trial going on. But the expense, I think, at this point is prohibitive for that solution. Airport improvements, they're listed there. Landfill improvement. You'd hard to read it. Oh, that would be if we change the direction if we go to a single landfill operation, we would probably want to install scales, or at least consider that, and change our pricing and so forth to a truly accurate tonnage approach. That'll be answered somewhat when we get more information about the direction we're going to go with the landfill. Ward Canyon Road realignment. This one may move up if we get funding to do so. This actually would. David and I talked about bridges and names the other day, and I had them, I think, all wrong. But there's a bridge that is the Loma Linda Canyon. Wash. Yeah, which is not on our inventory, probably needs to be replaced. But if you realign the road, you do that as part of that road. And then that new bridge, as part of the straightening out of Ward Canyon, would that new bridge or culvert system, whatever we build, would become on our inventory. But we've asked for, and we've made the first round of congressionally designated spending through Senator Kelly's office. there are several rounds to go, but if that were to come about, then we would, this may be elevated, certainly on the design side. Digital records, again, this is one, even if we bought the infrastructure, we would need personnel to go with it. We're not in a position to hire personnel at this point to manage our digital records. Many of the offices are already doing it. Obviously, the recorder's office does all of their records digitally. I believe the assessor's office is highly digitized now. There's other pockets of records, particularly our historical records, that could be used, but I think leaving this on a tier 3 right now, so we don't forget about it, would be the right place for it at the moment. And with that, well, actually, I said I moved digital records up to tier 2. I'm comfortable with them in tier 2 or tier 3 at this point.
Derek, eventually, and an old redneck like me will go in kicking and screaming. But that's what everything's gonna be. And so postponing it, are we really doing ourselves, our office, our other elected officials, are we really doing them a service?
You're talking digital?
Digital, I mean, it's the future, and it's, I would be more comfortable if we moved it up, because eventually it's gonna become a reality. And I'd probably be 6 foot under, but it needs to be considered.
Well, we have Jojo here, as one of the elected officials in her department. What's your feeling on that, Jojo?
We have our builder software, which is basically a database of every parcel that's in the county ownership, etc. And then we have our new GIS enterprise, which is our mapping system, which can be a huge robust tool for not only my office, but for the other offices. However, if something happens and something goes down, we get hacked, God forbid, again, or any of that, we still have paper files. So everything we do that is digital is saved digitally as well as in our files as backup. We do, I mean, we still have our files that we pull out, and I think it's a safety net for us, just in case something was ever to happen.
One of the things that, and I appreciate that approach, it has become a bigger worry, of course, with hacking and so forth. Probably the biggest area where we have concerns is the board's office. Not quite, but almost every office runs some, if not a lot of their paperwork ends up going through the board's office. They have independent records, but a lot of that time, that stuff, I will take no credit. Laura, primarily in the board's office, and with help from other staff, has begun to digitize all of our purchase orders. So as they come through, they're digitized. That's helping us tremendously when it comes to auditing, when it comes to finding specific things we purchased. So elevating this to tier 2 would not be a bad plan. I will tell you that of all of the offices, the board is the furthest behind. And we also have the most records, both historic as well as we accumulate the most records. And that's not because we're some super office. It's just by nature of county structure, a lot of stuff comes through the board's office.
What's your feel, Ron? You're a lot younger than the other two of us.
Barely. Depends on the day if I feel that or not. But no, I think I think this got on the radar for digital records as we were having issues down in the basement. We had books and minutes and everything down there for 100 years, and we thought that it would be a good idea to try to digitize some of that, to make copies of, scan those documents, etc. But that was a project that we were thinking it'd be great for a summer student or something. But no, I think we're doing a great job at digitizing a lot of what we're doing. I think we're moving with the technology and moving with the trend. But I think that the primary thought of the digital records was to those books and tapes and everything else that we have down there, trying to digitize those to have those so that they don't degrade or get lost or something.
And I say, it will take some personnel, whether it's a summer student, my experience of trying to do this in the county attorney's office is it will take somebody dedicated to, particularly in the setup. So that records can be searched, they can be searched by different fields. That's a more ambitious project, but would I complain if we moved this up to tier 2 and started working on it? Absolutely not. I would love that. And as part of that planning, we would also come to you and say, we think this is what the personnel needs will be to build it and maintain it. We would likely outsource the building of it to a contractor, but a storage system is only as good as those who think it through. So if I don't know what a PO is, I'm not going to know how to classify it when I digitize it so that it can be found. So, but we can certainly move this to tier 2. Okay.
That would be my preference.
With that, I think I've got the project sorted out. Like I say, this is somewhat of a living document. It has already brought more discipline to what we're doing. We intend to fine tune it over the next few years so that it's even more disciplined. We can start building these things out on an assembly line type basis rather than sort of firing from the hip. So with that, I will make these changes, include them in the final budget package that'll be part of the adoption process on the 16th.
Okay, is there anything else to be brought before the work session? We've gone over the plan, and do you have any other items you'd like to?
I don't know.
That's
You
brief.
give me the direction I need. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, we once again, we really appreciate staff and all the elected officials and all those that have taken part in the work plan improvement. I think yes, we are stepping in lots of good directions, and hopefully we keep that momentum. And with that, there being no further items on agenda, this board meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, you take care.
I will take care.
Good to see you, Ron. Have a happy 4th of July, huh?
You too. Take
I
care.
will tell you to stay cool.
Little chilly out there with the rain last night. It was great.
All right, rub it in.
Take care, Ron.
Take care. Bye-bye.